The word doctor usually conjures up images of a white coat and a stethoscope, and basically someone who makes you feel better. Well, that might be true with our next guest, although he is a doctor of a slightly different variety. From KYA and the San Francisco Examiner, Dr. Rock.
How are you?
Well, how are you doing?
Well, I don't know. I'm doing well. I've been taking my pulse and checking my reflexes. I think I'm fine. How about your reflexes?
I don't know. You want to give it a...
there you go.
Great. Tell me, how did you get the name Dr. Rock?
For my students, actually. I was teaching at Stanford in Palo Alto, and my students started calling. I was teaching a course on the history of rock and roll, and my students said, hey, Dr. Rock. I said, well, I'm not a doctor, and my last name isn't Rock. But they found it easier. My last name is Israelo, and it's very hard to pronounce, so they just started calling me Dr. Rock, and the name stuck, and it's much easier to say on the radio, Dr. Rock, than Eric Israelo. So
you teach a class on the history of rock and roll. When do you start?
Well, I was teaching up until this past fall at USF, and I took a sabbatical and to write. I'm now writing in the Examiner every Friday, and also the radio show that I do, which is on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. It's on Friday from 4 to 6, Saturday from 9 to 12 p.m., and Sunday from 9 to 12 p.m.
Now, the history of rock and roll encompasses, what, 30 years? Does it go up to the present time?
Yeah, well, actually, I teach it in two parts. The first part I teach is from, say, 48 through 65. With about with the advent of the Beatles came in 64, and I sort of like closed the first half with the Beatles. The second half of the course then goes to what happened with the British invasion, and then psychedelic music, and then we bring ourselves right up to the present, even including new wave and punk music.
Are you as interested in what's going on in music
now? Of course. Music is a reflection of culture. Whatever is going on at any one time is going to be reflected in music. That's the great thing about music, because music has always been an immediate reflection of what was happening in the world. It's easy to go into a studio and record a record, much easier than to do a TV show, because TV shows take time, and also to make a movie. So I think music has always been much more of an accurate, immediate reflection of what's going on at any one time, more so than in the other media forms.
But TV now is really having a large effect, like
That's
MTV.
Right. Yeah, MTV it's interesting. It's changing the whole aspect of music. Records are being broken through TV, which has never happened before. As a matter of fact, TV for many years didn't want to deal with rock and roll at all.
Yeah.
And now it's actually breaking songs. The Stray Cats, their record, I think, just was broken through its exposure on MTV.
Now, let's get back to the Beatles for a moment. You have a bit of memorabilia, I think, that is rather interesting.
Well, this is one of my favorite records. This is the Beatles. This is Yesterday and Today, and this is the infamous Butcher Block cover, which was called the Butcher Block cover because they dress up as butchers and chopped up little baby dolls, and they immediately, when Capitol got this record, they decided, well, this is a terrible image for the Beatles, so we're going to cover it up. And if you remember the Yesterday and Today album, which is still out on the shelves, it has, I guess it's Paul in a trunk, and it's a white cover. So in many different occasions, you might have this cover, which is worth anywhere from, depending upon the shape of the record, from $100 to close to $400. But we tell people not to steam it off, because you can see underneath the white cover that this record is there. So what they do is they try to steam it off, and sometimes it ruins the record totally, ruins the cover. So
people might have a fortune, right, in their very own
I didn't know it. A friend came over to my house one day, and he says, I think you got the original cover. So we all sat around, and we put a little saliva on our finger, and we all sort of like pushed it off, and you can see that's exactly what we did. I have pictures of us all sitting around, spitting on our fingers and rubbing the cover off.
Sounds great. What about this next one?
This one is the $1 Million Quartet. This is actually was done in Germany, and well, I mean, the record was done here in America, but it's a German release. I don't think they have rights to play this in America because there's some kinds of conflict, contractual conflict, because Elvis recorded for RCA at the time that he did this record. He had already signed a big contract with RCA, and these are the other Sun artists. This is Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis. They were all recording for Sun, and Elvis just popped into the studio that day, and they call us the $1 Million Quartet. For a long time, people didn't realize that this was actually on tape, but it was on tape, and it's a classic recording. And then sometimes you have records like this. This is an old pre-rock and roll record. This is Honestly by Kitty Cowan. You examine it, and if you look at it very closely, you find out that it's really terminal, you see. You have to look at it this way. And what you do is you break it in half.
Right here.
Right.
Now, that was also worth about $350,
It was,
too.
but you know how it is with inflation, and we don't care anymore.
Eric, who do you think is the best band in San Francisco right now?
Well, you just had one of the best bands, Romeo Void, I think is excellent. It's depending upon what kind of music you like. I think one of the best local bands is Mitch Woods and his Rocket 88s. I appreciate that kind of music.
Well, right before we go, there's something you have in your pocket that I would just love to show everybody.
Which, my Dr. Rock?
Your Dr. Rock.
This
I don't know how close we can get in on this, but...
This is an official Dr. Rock. It's a paperweight. It's, I think I'm going to change the constitution of his head, I think, and put pens in, so I can have a pen holder and everything you ever wanted. But somebody said you ought to have a Dr. Rock, so
great.
This is a Dr.
Well,
Rock.
you can hear Dr. Rock on KYA Radio.
That's right.
And you can see
1260 a.m.
All right, and your column is in the San Francisco Examiner.
Every Friday.
Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. It's
All
nice
right.
to see you again.
We are going to pause for a short message, and when we come back, Bob Moore will be here with the 10th anniversary of the Haight-Ashbury Arts Workshop. So stay with us.